Well, good evening, everyone. I did tell you we'll start shortly. I'm sorry that it has been a kind of long shortly, but we're ready to start now. So please, at this time, I want to invite Sister Ermelita Warner-Paul to deliver the opening prayer.
Good night, colleagues. Let's all stand. Let us bow our heads as we go to the throne of grace. Father and our God, we give you thanks. Lord, we thank you because of who you are. You are the great I am. You are the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. We thank you even now, Lord, as you have woken us up this morning in our right minds, and you have kept us even to this point. We thank you, Father God, for CFBC-Jenkins Limited, for the foresight of this particular leadership program. As we celebrate 10 years, Father God, you have kept us through the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows. Through these, we have become better persons. And so, Lord, we thank you and we praise you. We lift up at this time our guest speaker, who has been chosen for such a time as this. And as he delivers, we pray, dear God, that the sound wisdom that comes forth will be only from you. May we who are here and listening will learn, because your word reminds us, how would they know if no one tells them? Father God, even now, we ask your blessings and we crave it for those who have journeyed through the 10 years that we have been here. We pray for our leader, Mr. Jenkins, as he continues to push forth this so that we can become better citizens. Lord, we thank you for the University Open Campus, for their foresight in joining and partnershiping with us. And we know that we can all achieve more once we come together. Even in this hallowed hour, Father God, we pray that you have your divine way. Whatever is said and done will be to your honor and to your glory. Wherever we have fallen short, we ask your forgiveness. These mercies we ask in no other name but the wonderful name of Jesus. Amen and amen.
Thank you very much, Sister Paul. And as I bid you welcome to this public lecture, I am sure that many would agree with me that it is indeed fitting that the 10th anniversary of the CFBC-Jenkins Leadership Training course should celebrate such an occasion with an opportunity to engage in sharpening the knowledge and understanding of our people as part of the way of mobilizing everyone for our part in leadership, in building not only our federation, but in contributing to the building of our CARIFORUM emerging civilization. The Jenkins Leadership Group has always intentionally, whenever there is a big anniversary, to have some form of public lecture and public education, because it is part of the philosophy of the whole program that, you know, whatever is done in the program should help in building strong leadership within our federation and, of course, within our wider region. And I want to say that the topic that has been chosen for tonight under the strong partnership of the CFBC Jenkins Leadership Program and our university, the University of the West Indies, is a very fitting one. Small economies in challenging geoeconomics and geopolitical environments, a case for St. Kitts-Nevis and its CARIFORUM partners in pursuing growth and development. And the topic is not only fitting and timely because we always need to know how we can play our part in growth and development, but within the context that we are in now, struggling as it is to reset our economies and our lives in the post-COVID situation and the emerging and what seemed to be the expanding situation of the war in Ukraine, which if you recognize that, it seems as if it's somehow it's been pursued to fuel maybe the war industry. And so we are getting our share of some of the difficulties spinning off from that. And so we want to, when we take all of this in context and the topic, I think it is fitting that we should applaud this undertaking by the Jenkins Limited and the partners, the Clarence Fitzroy Bryan College and our university, the University of the West Indies. I want to ask all of us to let us get deeply engaged in the evening activity so that each one of us can go away from this evening activity with a wider perspective, and even more importantly, that we would go with a stronger personal resolve to play whatever part we can in advancing the development of our federation and the wider emerging CARIFORUM civilization. So with those few words, I bid you a warm welcome, and I now want to continue. Brothers and sisters, and as I do so, I want to acknowledge some of the wonderful persons who have come here among us. I see, step right in before my very eyes, I see the acting vice president for academic and student affairs of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryan College, and I see Senior Dean Abraham, and Sister Wanda is the acting vice president for student and academic affairs, and all other deans and other members of the faculty and other members of staff of the CFBC. And of course, we have present with us Mrs. Gail Gray-Phillip, who is the head of our University of the West Indies Open Campus here in St. Kitts. I want to also acknowledge the presence. I am advised, but I'm advised that Ambassador Mills is present with us. I want to, yes, right here. And I want to also acknowledge your dear husband beside you. We are happy to have you, and thank you for being here with us. And from the Jenkins family and company, Mrs. Claudette Jenkins, Raphael Jenkins, Mr. and Mrs. Calvin Jenkins, Asim, Sherman, and Crystal, all of the Jenkins Limited, we want to acknowledge you and to affirm you here present with us. And those lecturers from the CFBC, I should say fellow lecturers from the CFBC-Jenkins Leadership Program, and I see some of the veterans there, who are always with us whenever we have these things. We want to say to you, special welcome as well. All the students and members of the media and ladies and gentlemen who have come from the public, welcome to all of you. We are happy to have you, and I am sure that this is going to be an enlightening and engaging evening for all of us. And so, with those acknowledgements, I want to, and of course I want to also affirm, give our special affirmation to our minister who led us in the opening prayer, Sister Emilita Warner Paul. We want to acknowledge your ministry. She doesn't like that term, that I address her as a minister, but whatever you do for God is a ministry. Even if you just say a little prayer, you're ministering wonderfully. And so at this time, I want to ask and invite the head of our university, the University of the West Indies Open Campus, and they are a strong partner in this program tonight, Mrs. Gail Gray Phillip, to come and deliver some opening and welcome remarks. Sister Gail.
Thank you very much. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. However, I want to recognize my partners for this initiative, the CFBC, all the senior admin persons who are here, and also Jenkins Limited, Mr. Jenkins and his team. The CFBC-Jenkins Limited Leadership Course, as we all know, has empowered participants to embrace their unique leadership styles, foster collaboration, and drive teams towards success. And this is evident in all the projects that we see across the island that the various cohorts have envisioned. They have completed all these projects, and they are maintaining these projects across the island. So as we celebrate this milestone, I'm reminded of a profound quote by the renowned leadership expert John C. Maxwell, who said, "Leadership is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It is about one life influencing another." This quote, I think, is the essence that Mr. Jenkins had in mind when he imagined this course. Also, as we celebrate this milestone, I'm reminded of the 7 attributes of the ideal University of the West Indies graduate. I'm not going to list all 7, but one of the attributes states that a UWI graduate should be socially, culturally, and environmentally responsible. This indicates that UWI graduates should recognize their roles and responsibilities within society. They should strive to make positive contributions to their community, promote social justice, and actively engage in activities that benefit the society as a whole. This includes volunteering, participating in community development projects, and advocating for marginalized groups. I'm sure you would agree with me that Mr. Jenkins, a graduate of the UWI, is displaying this another of the attributes of an ideal UWI graduate. Yeah. So on behalf of the University of the West Indies, many congratulations to Mr. Jenkins, the visionary, and other persons who've envisioned this course, the organizers, the instructors, the facilitators. I know they've worked tirelessly over the past years shaping the leaders of tomorrow. Many congratulations also to the participants over the 10 years who continue to be a part of the program, maintaining projects across our island. So I look forward to an informative presentation from Dr. Scott and a very interactive question and answer session. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Phillip, and we move right along. At this time, I want to ask the Senior Dean, one of the Senior Deans of the CFBC, Mr. Abraham, to come forward at this time and to deliver welcome and remarks on behalf of the CFBC. Mr. Abraham.
A pleasant good night to everyone. All protocols observed, but I would like to take this opportunity or take leave to congratulate Mr. Peter Jenkins for the partnership that CFBC and Jenkins Limited forged over the last 10 years. The Clarence Fitzgerald College, when we think of ourselves and we think of ourselves tomorrow, we think of ourselves as creating partnerships like the one that we are currently participating in this event to celebrate a milestone of what I would say federal, if not regional accomplishments in terms of the kind of work that Mr. Jenkins and his team has been able to do over the years. I myself have personally witnessed the type of engagement, the activities that I would say is of national importance, and it's a significant part of the overall development of St. Kitts and Nevis. So, Mr. Jenkins, we really appreciate the partnership and look forward to this partnership growing in strength, but also being an example for other partnerships. And of course, UWI, our very own, Mrs. Gail Gray-Phillip, you're still one of us. So, again, the partnership with CFBC, UWI, and of course, Jenkins Limited is one that is noteworthy. And to be here today to have Dr. Samuel Scott present on a topic which I believe it is timely, small open economies in challenging geo-economic and political environments, a case for St. Kitts and Nevis, its CARIFOR partners in pursuing growth and development. When I think or reflect on CARIFOR, and I reflect on our own history in the region, CARIFOR, including the Pacific, Caribbean, African nations, and the impact of economic activities and, of course, climate. I believe whatever is going to be imparted here tonight would be of value, and we would leave here, hopefully, much more informed, inspired, and ready to change our world. The Clarence Fitzroy-Bryan College is looking ahead in terms of growth. I believe, and I'm sure my colleagues would say the same, that we are poised to become a regional center of excellence, understanding where we fit within the OECS as a sub-region, understanding our vulnerabilities, understanding where we are or our place in this world, and the kind of activities we must engage in our local environment to ensure that our students, our direct and indirect stakeholders are prepared to face the many challenges that is sometimes blindsiding us. Climate change and its effects, but we must ensure that we continue to persevere. Persevere to ensure that our citizens are trained, they are exposed, and they create the kind of environment for further economic, political, and social development. CFBC as an institution is happy to have such a partnership and for such a long time. So once again, we show our gratitude to Mr. Jenkins and his team, and I bring warm welcome, I would say fraternal welcome, because UWI is one of our fraternal partners within the region. And Jenkins, of course, you're part of the family, you are actually an insider. Welcome to this Jenkins Limited 10th anniversary lecture. And again, I bring this on behalf of the faculty, management, and staff of the Clarence Fitzroy-Bryan College.
Well, at this time, it is my distinct pleasure to call to the microphone to bring warm greetings and brief remarks, the man whose vision we are celebrating here tonight, and the man whose involvement and continued support and energy has kept this program rolling over the last decade. Mr. R.A. Peter Jenkins, the Managing Director of Jenkins Limited.
Thank you, Archdeacon Isaiah Phillip, and Chairperson for tonight's proceedings. Allow me to adopt the protocol that has been established. In response, or rather to bring brief remarks I perhaps would like to say just one or two things because I want to hear Scotty. Firstly, to thank him because it was 1970-something that we met at Milner Hall in St. Augustine, Trinidad and Tobago, at the University of the West Indies. Unfortunately, at the time, I was senior to him. I was in charge of the hall, and he came in as a freshman. So we had to freshen him up. He was grubbed, yes. He did not like it, and he was very aggressive in his response, but we managed to tame him. And since then, we have kept this relationship, yes? And he decided that to show appreciation for what we're doing in St. Kitts-Nevis, he will come and be with us. So, my brother, I want to thank you. Yeah. To share in this experience with us tonight, we have two former Millionarites in Winston Morris and Mr. Mills. Could you all stand and be recognized, please? Yes. Thank you. So, I also want to recognize CFBC for allowing my company. I think it was the 30th anniversary of independence, and we decided that it would be a gift to CFBC. It had taken me 7 years to put the program together and to get the confidence to come up to CFBC and offer it as a homegrown leadership program. 7 years. So we're talking now of 17 years because this is 10 and 7, so it's 17 years ago I've been carrying this. So luckily there were some folks who decided to join and make this possible. I hear a lot of talk about Peter Jenkins, but it's not Peter Jenkins. It has been a collaboration of Kittitians and Nevisians who have come together to carry the program. And some of them are here tonight. I see Denzel Crook, who has been here from day one. Let me give him that. I see Victor Williams, my brother, who has been here from day one. Archdeacon, from day one, has been with the program. Michael Martin, from day one, has been with the program. So those who are here tonight, but there are others. Laverne Keynes, Dr. Osbert Liebert, Goldwyn O'Kane, so many. They just come and contribute to make sure that our young people get a better start than we did. Yes? And so tonight we have to record and show our gratitude to those who have made this possible. So to all the lecturers, could we give them a big hand, please? Lastly, I want to thank CFBC for giving us this opportunity. Dr. Anthony was the president at the time, and when I came to the college, I remember I walked. I didn't drive. I walked from Jenkins Limited, coming up with my bag. I wonder if they're going to accept this thing. Are they going to say that, you know, what you know about leadership? But Dr. Anthony embraced the idea, and with the help of Dr. Narayan, we were able to put the syllabus together and to establish what the deliverables would be, so that when we taught the course, we were able to keep track to see if we were achieving. So allow me please to thank all those who have been in the leadership position of CFBC that allowed this. Lastly, well, two other things. I see a youngster, his name is Alexander, who has joined us latterly. And I have some things left for you. You can't go far from this program. We're going to hold you and tie you down. Tremendous potential as a Kittitian in our audience. Could we give him a hand? So, My father came from Middle Island, half a tree, on a bicycle with less than a 7 standard certificate. And he came to town, met my mother, fell in love with my mother, fell in love with my mother, and they brought 3 children, 3 boys. But he was able to achieve much in his time, achieve much. And I say that to say, to encourage those who may be listening, who may be wondering and doubting themselves about what they can achieve. This man, without a 7 standard certificate, came to town and did very well. So you too can, if you put your minds to it and decide on what track you want to achieve and go down that road. So CE-Jenkins allows us to celebrate 66 years of business this year. So to the younger ones who are to inherit, I encourage them. I have my nephew in the corner, my sister's son. He has followed my father my father was the first mortician on the island, and he has followed him in that footstep. So I want to encourage them to keep going in terms of keeping and giving confidence to people in St. Kitts-Nevis that we are special people and that we can achieve greatness. Yeah. And I hope that this message continues to be pounded and pounded and pounded because we are special. Yes. Finally, today, Dr. Scott, with a number of persons, met at Solid Waste to see how we can boost exports of agricultural produce to the United States. And so, those of you in agriculture listening, there's a project. You can contact Mr. Winston Morris, who is one of the persons behind the project. We want to try to see how we can make agriculture now slightly different, a money-making affair for Kittitians and Nevisians. So thank you, Dr. Scott, for coming. And I wish that we would have a very successful evening. I hope I didn't bore you too much. And to Mrs. Mills, I know you're going to be, Ambassador Mills, I know it's not easy being an ambassador, but it's good to see that you're here with Genevieve tonight. And to all the others from the program who are here to give support, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And without further ado, I know everybody, we are here to hear the guest speaker. And without further ado, I want to ask that we have our guest speaker introduced, and he can move right into the lecture. Following the lecture, we are going to have questions and answers. We'll take questions in 3 or 4 batches, then Dr. Scott would respond, and we'll get to some more as we go along. So we'll move speedily and smoothly along. The introduction of the speaker.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to adopt the protocol so ably established. After Mr. Jenkins spoke, I wanted to just throw away this paper and give my own story as to why I was here. But we're not here for that, so I'll stick to the paper. Yes, sir. Blessed evening. I am more than proud to be the one chosen to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Samuel W. Scotty. I'm also dignified to be part of such a legion of leaders who have been able over the past 10 years to become a staple in our federation. And after this evening's event, we'll now be recognized in the region, and we'll strive to have these footprints implanted all over the world. It is important that I say thank you to the members of the Planning Committee for recognizing the need to host this timely public lecture. Topic: small, open economies in challenging geo-economic and geopolitical environments. A case for St. Kitts-Nevis and its CARIFORUM partners in pursuing growth and development. Now to Dr. Scott. Dr. Samuel Scotty He's an applied international business and trade economist, evaluator and negotiator. He's a graduate of the University of the West Indies in agriculture, University of Florida, master's and PhD in food and resource economics. With over 30 years of experience in international economics and business development, his areas of expertise consist of international business and trade, marketing, finance, monitoring and evaluation, economic development, entrepreneurship, enterprise development, strategic business planning, and agribusiness management. Dr. Scott has been involved in several consulting operations with various state, federal, multilateral agencies, NGOs, and private sector. His work experience covers over 400 domestic and international interventions in North America and over 50 countries. He is a member of the National Association of Business Economics, American Economic Association, and the American Evaluation Association. His current work covers economic development, geoeconomic and geopolitical country assessments, policy and sector analysis, insurance and non-insurance-based management modeling, small business and enterprise development, and metaverse applications in business enterprise development, investing promotion of healthy global industrial economy, access to finance, markets, land banking, food and agriculture environment, and social corporate governance, investment, cost-benefit modeling. Please help me to bring to the rostrum Dr. Samuel W. Scott. Scotty.
All protocol observed, ladies and gentlemen. Before I get into this piece, I want to tell you something. I was actually ragged as a grub by 2 Kittitians, not one. 1974, I was ragged at the Jamaica School of Agriculture by Winston Morris and a team of individuals. Peter won't say the year, but I'll say the year. 1979, at the University of the West Indies, I was ragged by a Kittitian, Peter Jenkins. Whatsoever happens, I am so happy that I was ragged by those 2 gentlemen. The next bit of the story is that my last substantial assignment before I migrated from the Caribbean was in the island of St. Kitts. And I want to tell you this, that when I matriculated to the University of Florida, within 3 days I got a job. I was identified as a Kittitian. So, for some unknown reason, as a matter of fact, I just tell you guys this, that St. Kitts for me is home. And Peter knows when I say St. Kitts is my home, that I genuinely mean that one, more or less. And when I was asked to do this one, I started to write some bits, so I put together a little salutation that I want to observe. I want to recognize the co-partnership and leadership of this college, Clarence Fitzroy Bryan College. I got it right. And my alma mater, the University of the West Indies. Go Pelican. All right. But I cannot stop there by moving through the order to recognize how important it is to acknowledge you ladies and gentlemen who have joined us this evening to go through something which I call experiencing a St. Kitts thunderstorm. I didn't know so many fantastic people would be here. and this is why I had to inject it, because Ambassador Mills is here, the Dean, and of course, from the clergy is also here. But I want to move forward in saying, I acknowledge so much Peter Jenkins and his family from Jenkins Limited. And this evening, I'm going to bestow something on him, which I know he's modestly saying, don't worry with that. The Jenkins Group of Companies. I feel powerful when I say that. I want you to raise your hands and recognize that it's not many companies that have started 60 years ago. I haven't seen Mr. Jenkins' picture, but I've seen his son. People like us did not have the chance to do that. Peter, thank you. And whatsoever happens, let the young ones know that it should be another 60 years. I want you to become engaged in it. I start out by saying, whatsoever you do, there are 5 bowls of blessings that you ought to recognize. Your relationship with God, your relationship with your health, because without you having the perfect health, you're not going to do the rest that will be coming. Your relationship with your wife, your extended family, and your network of friends. This evening, I had the pleasure of taking a picture with 2 of Peter's extended brother. One of them is a brother of a very good friend of mine. The next one is the relationship with your business, because without that substance, you are not going to be able to do one of the most important things that you are given, you are charged with to do here. Your relationship in giving, right? The art of living is giving. That's the bottom line. It is given from, it is this kind of thing that makes me know that another 60 years is on the horizon for not only Jenkins Limited, not only for the Open University, not only for the college, but also for St. Kitts to chart its course and navigate its path in the myriads of things that we're going to introduce this evening. We can't talk about all of them, you know, but I'm discuss all of them, but we're going to introduce a few bit of it. In the geopolitical and geoeconomic arena, policy recommendation cannot be presented arrogantly, acerbic, grandstanding, or selfishly one-sided. They have to be presented in a form where there is appropriate messaging. Be shrewd, be savvy, be pragmatic, and be forward-thinking. Look around the corner. It is best to look around the corner, because what you're going to do is say the what if. I studied with a guy from the Caribbean, and I remember the days I used to say, stop now. But every time you reach the answer, it was like a tree diagram in your mind. What if? What if? If then. His name is Dr. Kenrick Jordan. He's a Trinidadian. And I want you to look at the decisions you're going to make by every time you see a feasible solution. You ask yourself, what ifs? What ifs? Because the what ifs will ask you to extend your mind's eye, where you're going to be able to have a more rational solution. And this is how you're going to be able to look around the corner. You look around the corner in your mind's eye. This presentation will focus on how small economies like St. Kitts and other OECS countries and the CARIFORUM partners navigate this international relationship and policy in an environment that, given the actions of leading powers geopolitically, we may feel that we are left out. Remember the old adage, when the elephants play or fight, the grass will suffer or get trampled. Many countries I've seen, they allow the elephants to trample them. But I want to tell you, you're from a region that has been a pioneer in the larger region of the Caribbean. Because in many areas, the OECS, with St. Kitts involved, made the change that today we have the kind of transformation and capital accumulation inside this region. And I take two of them as an example. The telecommunication industry. It wasn't the large boys who cry out and do that. The CSME, it wasn't the large boys who promote those. It was right inside here with St. Kitts as a partner. The only currency, I repeat, the only currency that can stand up as a fiat currency right across the globe. 1979, 2.6882. I never forget that one. Because I moved from $1.20 to 1. And it is now 152 to 1. 7,480% devaluation since 1969. We won't call names, but we'll share the data. St. Kitts is there. And even what is happening now in the global space, if you're going to think about a currency to satisfy trade invoices, and this is where the whole argument comes in about de-dollarization and currency or what have you, the ones that they are choosing, I would prefer to hold my currency in the Eastern Caribbean dollar, which is St. Kitts. So value what you have and recognize what you have. So what are these SOEs? SOEs in this presentation are countries with population that are less than 1 million to 10 million. And there are 16 countries like this that we use in our study to look at what they have done well, what they can do further, to be able to say we have a rightful place in that 200 and odd nations that is inside the United Nations. St. Kitts is one of them. SOEs are microstates or mini-states, but they are sovereign states having small population and small land area. They are economies that participate in international trade, and here is where the kicker comes in. They are said to be too small to compare to their trading partners, and that their policy do not alter world prices, interest rate, and income. Again, I say to you, under those beliefs and definition, there are 7 assumptions that we all learn as economists about SOEs. And every one of them has been proven to be flawed if you were to look at how SOEs operate since World War II. Let's take the first assumption. Their interest rate do not affect the world interest rate, especially in the large countries, and hence do not affect the cost of capital and currency flow. Well, I want to tell you, continue the pathway of talking about de-dollarization and the new currency. Capital is going to flow in a region that has a stable currency. 2.6882. Love it. Their influence on the volume and pattern of trade is not significant when compared with consumption levels in comparison to the demand for goods, food, and services. So when you look at the $4 billion food deficit in the region, isn't St. Kitts and the OECS a part of that? So if the $4 billion wasn't all that an interesting piece of fun and monies, then maybe give us back $1 for $1 if you don't want to do that. But I hasten to say, the next one is that unless you're in a currency union, the impact of their exchange rate, that is the relative price of currencies, the fluctuation is not felt on global markets. Well, it may not be felt on global markets, but I'm sure if you're a pensioner in St. Kitts and you have $1 moving from 120 US to one of your dollar years ago, and it is now where you have to put up 152 of your dollar for that dollar, and otherwise you would feel that because you are a pensioner, you're on fixed income. What is lacking in the region, and I hope that this could be a class project of one of your students here, is to assess the basic needs basket of the entire region, and then look what a basket of goods cost in the various countries and project that back to 2.6882 and 120 to 1 and see who is currently better off and why a small open economy like St. Kitts plays a significant role in a region and a sub-region that ought to be recognized for the importance that they have been doing in the region. Here are the last few. Foreign direct investment are less absorptive. Even this today I heard that again. As these countries do not have the capacity or the productivity levels to use them efficiently and effectively. Wrong. These countries have absorptive capacity relative to themselves, not necessarily relative to another economy that may espouse. And you know what is so disingenuous about it? Many of these countries who are saying these things have debt to GDP, which when you compare St. Kitts' debt to GDP, it's way, way higher than our debt to GDP. So if you use the same benchmark, where's William? William, your brother knows no stuff about that because he's inside the institution that deals with those matrices. And when we talk sometimes, those are the things I'm saying. You have to rewrite some of the policies coming out of the supranational organization to recognize that small is important and foreign direct investment is it. And if you don't believe that, then I want to recommend an article to you. There's an article written around in the 1990s called The Tale of Two Cities, written by Alwyn Young, Capital Accumulation and Transformation, the Case of Hong Kong and Singapore. And let me tell you guys something. You see all these clips about Singapore saying it was, we are here where we are because we were pragmatic, we were honest, and meritocracy was it. That is half of the story. When you are located in a place where there are strained, centrally planned economy, you are actually, by de facto, the economic agent. And prior to 1994, when China got most favorite nation, Singapore was the economic agent for China, North Korea, Vietnam, Thailand, you name them. Hong Kong was too. If I was the economic agent for Cuba, I would have doubled the size of my economy. If I was the economic agent for Venezuela, I would have doubled the size of your economy. So don't beat yourself up, my friends, about your size and your space. Read that article and you will get the tips and bits as to how. I'm not saying governance was not a major part of it, but by becoming a de facto economic agent inside that region, both Hong Kong and Singapore could accumulate factors. You know what factors are? Factors are just the reverse of commodity, you know, because you need the factors. If you go into the trade models, and we won't go into that tonight or talk about, if you look at factors are really the end of the product. Because if you don't have the factors, you can't produce the product. And the transformation and mobility of factors spells sense. I will take up that debate anytime with any one of the guys. So understand where you are, because some of the things we are going to talk about is going to ask you to become an economic agent for many of the countries that surrounds you. So you have to open yourself now to take some of the things that are there. Because there are things, they used to say, we left something on the table. You know, when you play golf and you score, you miss a par or a birdie, they say you leave something on the table. You have to have that understanding of where you are. Then it is said, capital development for projects, especially those that include high-cost infrastructure, should not be promoted as per capita cost is significantly too high when you compare them to your GDP and your gross development product and your gross national income. That is one of the biggest nonsense as far as I'm concerned. And I'm going to tell you why. If so be the case then take the top 8 of those small open economies and look at what they have done in terms of the transformation inside their economy. I want you to read a book for me. It is called First to Third by Lee Kuan Yew. And one of the things he used to say, look at Singapore's skyline in 1965. And look at Burma's skyline in 1965. Look at us now. And you see the difference with the skyline in terms of the infrastructure that has been in place. 2 economies, but different ways of how to match resources and build resources. So if those economies, if Sweden, all of the Nordic countries under 10 million, if they were not to receive the capital injection, you would not have the kind of standard of living and infrastructure that they exist. So when you are being measured by why it is not right or feasible to cut a farm road going up to a village for a farmer because they cannot absorb it and it is too costly for them. You ask them, what happens when those farmers are able or are not able to move their products down to the airport or Port Zani? Make your decision and choose the hill on which you are going to die. Because at the end of the day, is SKN. And this goes into the last one. And just the other day, everybody is saying, Scotty, you can't say this anymore. Take it out of it. I was a PhD student when the article was published, and it says something like that, this: the marginal cost of disposing garbage is lower. Hence, waste from developing countries should flow into those economies. They are now saying that the person who wrote it was saying it in jest. I know it was not jest when I was a PhD student, because many of us in our department, there were 80 of us from small open economies, and we were up in awe. Google and see who said it, because they're still around on TV, you know, saying nice things now about policy. What you believe is what you think. And no matter what happens, at the end of the day, protect your land space. Côte d'Ivoire. You remember the stink about the waste that came in that had radioactive component inside of it? I'm not even going to say anything about what. There was a company registered in Estonia that was moving garbage that has some of the most heavy metals going to other countries. My friend, let them ship on their barges. Don't come into your 12-mile space out there. And join with your partner and tell them, don't let it come 200 miles near you. Remember when that ship was going around the Caribbean with garbage? And then I went to a conference and met two Greek brothers from Boston that said to me, you know, your prime minister is a very rough prime minister. At the time it was P.J. Patterson. Because we came down to talk about using waste. And PJ looked at them and said, you keep your over there, we keep our right here. You understand what I mean? Rough story. Your leaders have to stand up, or else as a small open economy, they're going to run roughshod over you. You understand me? You can't, but you don't have to be arrogant, or you don't have to be belligerent. I think I would have said to those boys from Boston, you know, we can't manage the stuff here. So we can't add any more, because the marginal cost of handling the stuff is too high for me here. Messaging is important. Read and become a skillful negotiator. Everybody. And I hope that all those who are in international relations would do two things. One, learn managerial economics, learn managerial finance. Because at the end of the day, is how you stack up that benefit against your cost. So as a small open economy, you're faced with the following issues. How do I build a relationship with my neighbor in the North America? Especially with the current program of Build Back Better World under the current president. The next one, do I do the look east policy and look for support under the Belt and Road Initiative, Mr. Xi Jinping's agenda? Or do I look to our former colonial masters under the Global Gateway Initiative, under the various indicative programs that are called the EU allotment? I don't even know if you should look to even UK, because it looked like that government, they fall out of love with each other every 6 weeks, right? But they say that they are interested in in helping you to build your blue and green economy. But if you build my blue and green economy, I still have children to feed, houses to build, roads to build, power to generate, hospitals to build, and of course, shelter for those who can't get there. So don't help me to keep the corals so that your tourists can come and swim and see how it's nice alone. Balance the program such that your tourists come and swim, but if I have my housing stocks that are low, meaning I don't have enough house for people, help me to see how you can help me to get my housing stocks up. Before I even get into international economics, I always wondered why the projects are not projects that deal with some of the bread and butter issues that many of these small and open economies face. It is always taking them on the treadmill for them to look at esoteric projects. And then, all of a sudden, 40 years after, they find oil. New discovery. What? New discovery wasn't there before? Because with telemetry and what have you, everybody knows where there is energy. But can we say that they should allow to develop their economies because it's the age of fossil fuel and this and what have you? I'm going to tell you this. Balance what you're doing. Get new and renewable energy, but recognize that a plane flying cannot stop mid-air to recharge the battery. You understand me? So you have to be realistic, be pragmatic in the things that you're going to do. Then there are bilateral relationships. Believe me, guys, everybody wants to be in these big trade blocs, and it was the name of the game when I was in school. But strike out your bilateral relationships, looking at South Korea. And I want to tell you why you should look at South Korea. The last time I met with the South Korean folks was about 5 years ago, and they spent time to say to us the things that they did since after the Second World War to protect and grow their industries. Messaging again. You can't look on the elephant and tell him that I want protection for my infant industries, because he's going to tell you there's no need for infant industries. But what you look on the elephant and say, maybe if you allow me to do some of the industry, I can produce more grass for you. Right? There's always a give and take. Shrewd, savvy, correct messaging. Regional interests. If CARICOM Single Market Initiative fails to deliver for us in the next 10 years what we need as a region or a country, we have lost one of the best opportunities. And therefore, I believe in the stock market, the regional stock market. I believe in the movement of natural persons. What's so unnatural about us? Right? The movement of factors. Because whether you want to believe it or not, if you were to trace since the last 10,000 years, all that is happening is that development is moving from place to place. There will be another region doing well because factors move, and factors move because of wealth accumulation. If you cannot accumulate sustenance, you cannot attract factors. Because as my good friend, Mr. Mohan, who is Vice President for the Australian Bank operating in the Pacific, he said, capital is like a nervous person blowing in the wind. And if you don't make capital stable, you're not going to get anything afterwards. But here are the things that are beating us up, and we don't even know how they are moving more or less now. Global currency and multipolar, to dollarize or not to dollarize, deindustrialization of consumer goods and trade flows. When you trade and buy trinkets and spend your bullions and species, your gold and silver, the other guy is going to be able to build super ships, cannons, and blast off to places that you can never go. While you're here, wiggling and dancing and having a merry time consuming consumer durables. The United States deindustrialized their economy since 1974, starting with textile. And we're going to come to what happened after that. And it has been a slippery slope where it's now taking a double turn to decide where to go. We cannot afford in small open economies to discourage the young man who wants to fabricate a bicycle using scrap iron. And then because of his ingenuity, because of his ideation, everybody talk about productivity and what have you. But before productivity come ideation, innovation, investment. All of that comes in play. Because if you don't believe that the young man doing that bicycle has a future, then you think where Kia came from. Kia came from a bicycle. So you have to understand when the South Koreans say we had to protect their industries. And you have to encourage that innovation. So it's not a matter anymore of degrees and credentials or what have you. It is skill-based and dreaming like a St. Kitts thunderstorm, because the idea is going to hit you and you're going to be able to come up with it. Saturday we'll be talking about more of that. Defragmentation or globalism, where the West seems to be declining, as everybody's saying, and the East plus the Southeast are vying for political, economic, military hegemony. I can only say to you, you have to recognize that there comes a time when you have to take sides. And again, if you read that book, 1st to 3rd, he said, I chose sides and I make a decision, and we are better off in doing that. You may have to take sides. But with the wave of national and regional populism, which is me first, and no rules in engagement, won't call any name, but there are certain roads in the world, you can't cross it, you know, because vehicles and cars and people are doing it, what have you. And I remember when I carried my family to that country, And I looked at them and I said, run, we're going across the road. And my daughter looked at me and said, but they have the zebra crossing. I said, but they do not respect the zebra crossing. And I said, I have never been in a hospital and see a machine or a motor car asking, nurse, so you run with daddy tonight. You understand me? And so rules-based is important, and norms are important, but you have to navigate how you go and drive down that highway, that lane of development. Don't feel disheartened, but global super gangs, transnational criminals, crime and violence is taking a toll on every single solitary piece of landmass. And you have to come down. The esoteric argument and the juxtaposition between how we sound or what we do will not make you safe. I remember when I came to the Eastern Caribbean, I was asked, oh, so Scotty, what industry would you go in? I said, I came down here to develop a spice project with farmers. He said, I just want to get you in Pigner, man. I said, I would go into steel fabrication. Because where I was coming from, you had to do steel fabrication. Ain't knocking it, but that's it. And I grew to see many of those countries feeling the pinch now of bad behavior that, listen, if we had taken the approach to stamp out bad behavior and petty little issues, some of the challenges we are facing now, you know the story about the broken glass theory? Some of the challenges we face now is, my daddy used to say, but Sam, there may be a lost tribe. I don't believe. He was a military and a policeman. I said, I can't do that. I can't go walk that road. I still that day. And there are 5 things that can be credible. There are 9 things that you can do to alleviate poverty. It's 9 things. And we're going to talk about that another time. But there are 9 things you can do to alleviate poverty. Go back in the 1860s from the work of Booth, which was the first sociologist, economist you call him, 9 things. And it has shown that you can move people from abject poverty. And there are 5 things that many other countries have used to fight crime and violence. That's another lecture for another day, but PJ has my number and he knows how crazy I am. So I'll share the 9 and I'll share the 5. And you meet with your policymakers and see which one is working. But one of the first one, if you litter, you're going to charge. If you spit chewing gum on the floor, I was going to take a picture for my presentation. If you are asked to relocate into a building with better amenities, don't put the pigs and the chickens upstairs. Which happens, it's a cultural thing, it's a mindset, right? You have to demonstrate that you are going to be willing to take the bull by the horn and take out the petty stuff that is happening. None of you want to get a 2 o'clock call in the morning saying, Daddy, Mom, things ain't going right, you know. And as a mentor, I've had those calls, not from my children, but from some of my mentees. I'm out with so-and-so and so, and she's not doing that. What should you do or whatever? And my wife is on in the bedroom and said, what did we do? And I said, what do we do? I have to put on my tracksuit and my stuff and I have to drive down to South Beach and go put her in the back of the car and take her home. You have to do some of that outside of your family member. Grab some. Take some of the youngsters and bring them in as a pool. Bring them into your office to read for 20 minutes. Take them into and make them become accountable. Use shopping spree. You know what I used to do? I used to get dimes and 25 cents and take them where you use the money counting process. They're learning money in the content area to buy shoes. And don't take them to the expensive ones. And then you show them the art of it. One of my mentees, and I talk about this, and I'm moving into what you're going to have to do, the 7 to 8 things to get your house in order. If you have started, fine, which you have. I remember that youngster, I took him through a neighborhood because I was going to show them. The story was, does God come to the ghetto or only to the gated neighborhoods? And when I took the youngster, I heard him scream in the back of the car, I hate rich people, I hate rich people. And I said, why do you hate them? Because things just go good for them every day. Let me fast forward. MIT doing his master's, foreign student learning languages, a mentor now for black students, 13 students recruit. Mommy wondering why you won't come home, because he has found a girlfriend now who they talk things that I can't relate to my neighborhood anymore. I said, but you hate rich people, don't you? So exposure. If there is one thing that I would recommend to any of you inside here in navigating all of those trials and tribulations there, send a bus one Saturday or a Sunday to take some of the youngsters from the countryside to just come. They may think you're a madman like Forrest Gump. And you walk the street of Basseterre. And you go up into nice neighborhoods. And you say, you can do it. Because if you transform that mind, you change the trajectory of what is going to come. And this is where the fifth blessing, giving back, it's there. So before you make your ask on the global stage to form alliances or get things going, here are the things you need to get in order. Peace and prosperity. Security, peace, and prosperity must be the order of the day. Just like how you know that your health is going to determine where you're going to go. If security, peace, and prosperity isn't there, you can't navigate anything else. Because capital does not want to be in a stormy area. Right? Poverty alleviation. It does not have to be sweeping programs that you have nobody accountable for or whatever. It can start from the churches, the companies, churches, NGOs, churches, companies can start to look at where are the at-risk kids that we can find to tell them our story of when Daddy Jenkins came with the bicycle. And where is Peter now? Sponsoring a leadership program. You think Daddy Jenkins didn't know that? It was there inside of him. Because nothing you do emanates from outside of you. It is all there. If you believe in the metaphysical principles that mind, body, and spirit work in connectivity, it is there, man. Just need to open that tap. Good governance. Children live what they learn. So you have to hold your leaders accountable. Abraham Lincoln says something, and he says it this way. A nation gets the politician that they deserve. Then there was a mobster, Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky from the mob. Meyer Lansky says, a country gets the criminals that it deserves. Food and nutrition security. Value your farmers. Even if they come out with a tattered hat or shoes that is broken, value. Because I want to tell you something. The day that that boat cannot show up with the rice and the flour and the sugar is the farmer that does the dasheen and the sweet potato and the yam. That everybody is going on. As my friend said to me, Scotty, you have a firearm? I said, why? I'm saying, anytime we can't get food at the supermarket, you know, we come in for you, you know. Many people may say Rome fell. But you know why Rome fell? Food crisis, you know. We won't go into why. Julius Caesar was on his merry way in Egypt trying to do all kinds of stuff and left his friend Mark Antony to oversee the grain store in Rome. And he wasn't doing a good job and people start to riot. And by the time him come back, they hit him 28 times. All right? Learn your history. There's nothing that is new other than the history that you don't know. Because history smiles at those who do not understand the lessons that it is supposed to teach you. That's the bottom line. Income and employment stabilization. Bob Marley says, give a little, take a little. You have to recognize that people who experience stable employment, stable income either through their business, is going to be people who sees that there is a value and a worth to life. If they are not connected, there is nothing to lose. And people who have nothing to lose will lose your stuff. That's what my dad says. So income and employment are the key factors in stabilizing that. Access to health, education, technology, services, housing, infrastructure, and modernization of your utilities. There are many countries in the Caribbean that just water just keep running from the hill to the sea. When rainfall is flood, but there is no catchment area for it. Build your Noah Ark, man. Right? Build your Noah Ark. They always say madmen do stuff. Joseph Strauss, when he looked and see a bridge to cross the Golden Gate Bridge, he said, you're a madman, you can never build it. Lissepi, when he decided to do the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal, people say, you're mad, you're crazy, you can't do it, more or less. Start public works project to look at water, food, and bring those things. Because after, many of those youngsters who work on those public works projects are going to believe and understand that they can do something. The skills that they develop inside of it. Take on projects that sustain. Once you have set up that matrix and folks see that your house in order, then you can start to go out now. And if you're going to be dealing with the United States, here are some of your contact points. The Latin American Bureau in the U.S. Department, Ambassador Mills is here. The USAID, working through their missions office, whether it's Barbados or Dominican Republic, arrive with a clear matrix of what you want and what you can offer. And let me tell you, United States look favorable when the ask that is coming is supported by their mission directives. So read their annual program statement. They have 5-year annual program statement for every region, and pick out the things that you can do well and get involved in those things. So here are some of the things that the U.S. love to hear. Drug interdiction, orderly migration flow, crime and violence mitigation, containing the influence of some people, importing more goods and services, as well as demonstrating that you're a reliable partner in the United Nations and in supernation. But when you sit around the table, have in the back of your mind, don't say it now, what have you done for me lately? But when you say that in your mind, make sure that you come up and you say, this is what I want. Your ask should include the following: aid for trade for development. Aid for trade, not aid to consume. For trade and development. Crime fighting gears, because your law enforcement needs state of the art. Funding for education. Engage the U.S. private sector in partnering on some of the things you're already doing. Offshore education stuff. And I've always wondered why St. Kitts is not the financial center like Cayman, and the central bank is where you have it housed here. It's time now for St. Kitts to start to look at becoming the Mid-South agent as a financial institution, organization, or what have you, that manage money. Your money are like soldiers. You send them out to conquer more soldiers, right? That's the bottom line. It is not too late for you to revisit your laws and stuff like that, to look at being a part of the global investment scheme. Yeah, they're going to beat you up through the OECD saying this is that and that is that. But start. Because $1 you come in is $1 more that you didn't have. Right? Direct investment, shared intelligence. And let me be very clear. If you do not value intelligence, whether it's going to be human or signal, start now. Start to build a cadre of individuals who know how to look and how to analyze. Because at the end of the day, the pastor christens his children first. Right? That's how nationalism should be. You look at how you're going to use information. Be clear about your relationships with the other elephants that are in the room. We're going to get to that later on. I know everybody's saying he's skirting around it. When you're working with the United States, understand the importance of lobbyists and working with racially defined caucuses. The Black Caucus will welcome you very well in talking with you. And make sure that the foreign minister and the ambassador that you have, when they get to Washington, they are nicely aggressive. Meaning that they know where all the departments are. And I can tell you this, there are 6 of them that you should have. Your consular, your ambassador should be going in almost every month, or holding the cocktail. You really want to see those get people do well? Have a summer barbecue and make some watermelon balls and throw some St. Kitts CSR inside of it, or rum. And halfway through the party, you said, you know, we are looking at so-and-so. The rule about engagement negotiation is this. It's not what the public see, it's the negotiation. It's the garden walk. So after they full up with the St. Kitts barbecue chicken and the rum balls, he said, can you walk with me? And do the walk, you say, you know, we're looking at building 3,000 kilometers of class 1 roads. And we're looking for a partner to do this. Always look for a partner. And the partner that we're looking for is to supply us with the equipment, teach our guys to operate the machinery and stuff like that. And what we're going to be doing is providing the frontline workers to handle that stuff. Now, how can we speak to that project which your assistant? The first thing is going to say, oh, Peter, I was just dying for you to say something. You understand what I mean? I went to school, and after school, I was supposed to get back down here, but I decided to learn economic development. And those were some of the things I learned. Curry favor is not a bad word if the principle and process under which you're going to do it justify a greater good that is beyond a selfish motive. Yeah, support their building capacity with energy generation and the power grid, but ask them that it is time now for a new indicative program that deals with issues that the Caribbean is facing. The first one they're going to tell you is climate change. You say, yes, that is A. But here is B, C, and D. And speak to that. Tell your minister at the heads of government, the Shagum and what have you, be nicely aggressive, right? Every meeting that I've gone to with developed countries doing their negotiation, right across the hotel is a private sector group representing the different agencies that are there. You want to know why? If around the table, Minister Jenkins is having an issue as to what to give up or what not to give up, he says, can we put that in the parking lot until after lunch? And he comes over the hotel and knock on my door. I says, Scotty, this is what needs to be done. You have your St. Kitts delegate, more or less, and you better have some people who sharp that can write you something that you go inside. He said, ladies and gentlemen, our position is that we recognize what you're saying, but this is what we think could be a win-win situation for us. You have to learn to negotiate skillfully, and you have to know how to language it. Relationship with UK. As I tell you, I don't know how they are blowing or where the wind is blowing, but it's one thing I can tell you. It is best to have friends and not enemies. So don't beat them up. For 400 years, you do this and that and what have you. I remember going to the CBI conference most years in Miami, and one day one of the senior advisors in a certain department in U.S. government said to me, Scotty, why is it that we're paying for this 3-day conference when all they're doing is just beating us up? Let me tell you, developed countries prefer you to hit them in the mouth than saying bad things about them, right? I'm not saying you must be a hypocrite, but you have to be nicely aggressive. Remember that word. Bilateral relationship sees St. Kitts to pursue policies where they become economic agent or a platform for production to get into the wider markets using what is known as the labor content rule or the value-added rule. So stuffed toys shouldn't be coming thousands of miles away, going into all the stores and markets overseas, when I know that there are folks who can design and do that very well. So find a partner who they like to buy from to do some of those stuff, and do the platform from there. Natural gas is something that, whether or not you have renewables, it is going to be still be the order of the day. Guyana is a partner now. Set up, don't go to Guyana with 10 and 12, 13 people in 10 and 12 different stuff. Know what you're going to go down there for and decide what you want to do. But get on the ground floor of their oil and gas industry. Get involved. If it's even $1 into the next train, get involved. Be a part and beseech, appeal to the CARICOM single market economy protocol. They all sign it. They are all signature. Look east, my friend, but look to Africa. But don't just look to Africa from the standpoint of, well, tourists going to come and this and what have you. Look at hard projects that have hard investments, that have hard results. But if you want to build overnight an IT industry, go Africa. Charlie will tell you, as a technology man, you have some, you see mobile money and digital money, it came out of a student paper from Kenya. So all these folks talking about, oh, we're using mobile money and what have you. And when you go Africa, you will see how SACCOs, credit union, using M-Pesa. Don't just take vacation to come and look for me up north. Take vacation to go to Africa and look and see what they're doing, because by numbers, they have the people that you can do it. When the Caribbean looked at ICT, they choose to look at bringing in Southeast Asians. That's what I call them. You know who they are. To come in and help you to build out your platform. It would have been better if you got gone to Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, you name it, to find some youngsters who are doing some things that are magical when it comes to ICT. And they look like us, they talk like us, and they are comfortable working with us. And this is what you'll have to do. Your realignment with Africa seeks not only to empower the diaspora, but to extend the bridges, to build areas that are workable for both sides. And ICT is one of the areas that you can go in. So I close now by looking at the elephant in the room. Relationship with China and Taiwan. In the meantime, use soft back-channel communication approach to solicit participation in high-value projects, knowing that you will have to give up some tangible assets. Wink, wink. It's there. Land, roads, ports. But one of my mentees, just across the road over there in Antigua, said to me, Scotty, you know why I will go anywhere and ask for tangible infrastructure to in my country? They can't take it up and make it go anywhere. Right? Can't take up anything and go anywhere. Expand the educational base and ask your students when they go there, do not just do the degree and stay inside the dorm. go to the market, read the newsletters, read the papers, take picnics and outings, and whosoever invite you to their home, do the cultural experiences to come back and say, when I was there, I saw where they were channeling water. You ever see a body of water running, instead of running down, flowing up? First time I saw it was in China. Built 2,000 years ago. Dujiangcheng waterworks. Massive waterworks. I don't know what to do there, you know. I don't know if it's a alien there pushing the water more or less. But there is some principle between that. I don't know. So if you didn't see, you would know. Only engage if you understand what is happening to that mix that is called the One China policy and the sovereignty of Taiwan. Folks, you don't have to go anywhere now. The U.S. position is in various charters and amendments. Just go online and you will see how they are doing their operate, the relationship that they are doing. And you craft out how you want to be engaged. Some people say we shouldn't shift. We should shift. Some people say we should recognize. What you must know is that the geopolitical alliance and the geoeconomic alliance that you do must bring tangible benefits. Not only ministerial visits, scholarships, showing how to make nice flowers and bows work. When you go to Taiwan, you organize for a trip down to the south to see how TMSC is doing chips. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be doing some of the circuitry and stuff like that to be engaged. But you have to have people with the mindset of wanting to become engaged. Look at capital projects, planning in a 3-year cycle, but towards something that is called the 25-year next generation project. You know, in the early days, they say, oh, strategic planning, we're planning for 5 years, and there's 2 types of planning. We like tactical planning and strategic planning. Folks, the way in which things are moving, planning 3 years, 36 months. But you do loop, and this is what most folks won't understand about the Asians. The Asians really plan in 30-year cycle, you know. But when you narrow it down, you know, it's 3 years they're really planning, but they do loop that 3 years. While we do, because of our British orientation, we do 5-year plan and 10-year plan and what have you. The further you go from the starting point is the less you're going to be able to realize the results that you expect. So plan in 3-year cycles with the understanding that we're walking this road 25 years. I don't think there's a lady in the audience here who would want to hear that. I'm only planning in 3-year cycles for a 25-year relationship. But I want to tell you something. In actual life, it does. Because you're able to, and when you do the 3-year plan, do 90-day milestones. Don't do 18 months and 12 months, a milestone. 90 days. I am doing this to get these results, and I'm really willing to tweak it. And I'm so sorry because I'm not seeing the Ministry of Economic Development and Economic Empowerment in any of the Caribbean region having a battery or a cadre of individuals who you can wake them up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, what we had planned to do last week, it is not working. What needs to change? The young minds don't sleep. Old guys like us go to bed at 10 o'clock, you understand? But by 2 o'clock, we get up and ready to rip and roll. You have to have the cadre of youngsters. Build your cadre of youngsters to look at your plans and don't disregard what they're saying to you. Because let me tell you something. Ignorance generates some of the boldest moves that you will ever see. Right? And as soon as they reach mid-20s, they stop being bold. I remember my daughter, oh boy, bold, bold, bold. And as soon as she reached 25, she just started mellowing. And I said, what happened to you, honey? And she said, I have to value the risk now, you know, Dad. Because as you say to me, you have spring of your life, the summer of your life, the autumn and the winter. I am now in the spring of my life going into the summer, and I have to be very careful. And then when you reach into the autumn and the winter, you didn't do anything in the spring and the summer of your life. You become a desperate loser that makes some of the worst decisions that friends start asking. Boy, I never know that guy, you know what he's doing. So inside your business, you have the spring employees, the summer employees, the autumn employees, and the winter employees. And you bring them together in the ideation room, set aside a few hours, and I hope ministries will do this too, because in the private, come together and do your ideation to come up with ways to do different things. Innovation doesn't mean that you're going to change tangible things only, you know. Innovation includes doing things that are intangible in a different way. And that's the spirit of technology. In closing, we are at a global crossroad. But look to the path on the horizon where light emanates from nature, the sun, and not necessarily from flashes, from bombs and artillery. Thank you very much, and I do look forward for future engagements in my home country, St. Kitts. And I will not turn my back on anything that you ask me to do, for the very reason dividends are paid later on. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, sure. Yes, I should stay around for questions. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, sir.
Well, certainly we have had quite an engaging and involved things, and I won't delay. I'm sure some of you are boiling over to have your questions. So, yes, we recognize Victor.
Thank you. Bishop, Victor Williams, well, citizen. I shouldn't say it, but I have to say it this way. Great Scott.
Oh,
I just had to get in that. Had to get in that. Excellent food for thought, and so many thoughts. I must admit, I'm an architect and town planner, and an economist, but I guess I've slept with an economist long enough, so something must have rubbed off. Married, of course.
Yeah.
Scott, a number of questions, but one thing that tends to summarize my thoughts is that we speak of capital inflows, and very, very important, but I think one of our challenges is how do we retain a greater percentage of the dollar? I think that's very, very important. Of the dollar. Because a lot of it goes back out, and so the retention is low. And the second thing is that how do we really influence the rewriting of national policies from the big institutions? I think I'll pause at those.
Wow. Wow.
Yes, so we'll have, somebody else have another.
Capital flow
And
and,
then- yes,
and
Retention.
retention. And how do you, financial policies?
Yes, how they influence the rewriting of financial policies by the big financial institutions, because those are the ones who set the terms.
Big
not-
institutions.
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Alexander.
Yeah. So Alexander, so if we pay attention, you spoke of history, and we know the global reserve currencies, they exist for about, let's say, about 94 years.
Yes.
And America has been the dominant superpower for about 111.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts relative to a changing of the guard, essentially?
Changing of the guard regarding reserve currency.
Currencies, right. And how does that implement, or how does that affect
Does that
the direction of our relationships
affect the direction of
relative to the Caribbean region?
our relationship? Boy, PJ, I think you had set me up for this more or less. Any more questions? All right, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, you could respond.
Capital flow and retention. In assessing capital flow, the first thing that you have to do is look at an input-output matrix that will be able to basically summarize what you are going to do in terms of when funds comes in and when funds goes out. The only thing I can tell you, based on what I've seen elsewhere, one of the best countries that have been able to do well in terms of managing capital inflows and outflows is the Bahamas. Yes. So look to the Bahamas. But what the Bahamas did was under the radar, just like how Cayman was able to set up, become a financial center. It was able to put in the legislation to be able to have those banks and institutions that can move through. They didn't use interest rate to say interest rate as a caveat to get more savings in, more or less. They didn't even use the currency, more or less. What they did was the reordering of their offshore financial institution and become an economic agent to manage money. And that's all you can do from there. So you have to sit with the lawyers now, and sit with the accountants, and sit with your central bankers too, and say, this is the input-output matrix. If it is going to cost $1 trillion for the St. Kitts economy, and we are only taking X dollars as tax, and we are taking the Y for flows from outside, how do we balance the program such that we can hold this amount or we can spend that amount? And the two things I've seen work is the input-output matrix that allows you to see what you need to spend and what you need, and look at how you reorder yourself as an economic agent to be able to attract good funds coming in. I'll use the word good. I don't know about another one, more or less. That's the first one. Financial policy for the big institution. You're in a very good position with a stable central bank. And with a stable central bank, one of the things that we would like to see more of is how the private sector become engaged with your central bank so they can send signals out, more or less. And I remember when Dwight Venner was the governor of the bank here, and I remember when he says he wants to do some development work, and they say central bank shouldn't be engaged in development work. But one of the things that he was doing when he came on that trip was to engage the private sector to get real readings and signals as to what they are saying and how they are operating. Because at the end of the day, World Bank isn't going to come in and want to talk to the Chamber of Commerce unless they really want to find out if there's 5 or 6 exchange rate on the road. But I'm sure the World Bankers know who inside your central bank to talk to. So one of the things we promote is private sector engagement with financial institutions. Let me pause here and tell you a little bit about this. The relief to the banks in the 2008 crisis was 1/5 of my presentation today and half a page, because the private sector was engaged with the federal bank to be able to influence how things go. And your best friend should be politicians, you know. Your best customer should be the government. They work. However inefficient or efficient they are, the private sector needs to play a more active role to send good signals to our bankers such that they can be able to negotiate more skillfully on our behalf in terms of getting it. So I'm not going to say you do position paper to tell the World Bank or do this. Start right from home here. Right from home here. Start doing things that seems abnormal by having a relationship or a round robin every Thursday. A brown paper bag session with your central bankers. Or, well, cocktails may get you to say things that the central bank may need not to hear, so they tax you more. They tell the government to pull more. All right. Now, boy, this question about currency reserve and what have you, here's what I'm going to say to you. In the short run, moving from the dollar to pay for trade invoices within certain regional blocks will work. But on the other side of the coin, as a central banker who is sitting here, will tell you that there is something called your capital account, which would include how people invest, how much money. Two of the reasons why the United States could maintain itself as the reserve currency of the world. Number one, they were able to stabilize their financial markets where everybody wants to park their money there, right? That's number one. And number two, they could run the highest current account deficit such that the world, including the nemesis, the big behemoth that you're looking at, China, could move as a most favored nation state in 1994. And you know what most favored does? Let me just use one example. One day I was talking to my professor and he said, "You really want to see what most favored nation does?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Go and look at the HTS schedule, the harmonization tariff schedule, and look at the one in terms of how we treat China's good and how we treat Vietnam goods." And I was excited. You know what I chose to look at? Edos coming from Dashin and from Vietnam into the United States, coming from China into. You know what was the tax on Edos coming from China? 5%. You know what was the tax on Vietnam Edos coming? 95%. Wow. That sends me a signal. Then the other part was when China accession to the WTO in 2001, and it currently under the 99 chapter exports more than 17,000 items. I want some kids to go in and look in and see how much they can take of that 17,000 to start looking at their neighbor now. So in truth and in fact, trading within trade blocks to satisfy trade invoices is right. But in the long run, China will have to decide whether it can set the structure. China, India, Russia can set a financial system where they run the kinds of current account deficit to make the other parts of the world stabilize, or else everybody going to run back to the US dollar. But the US has preempted that. The US is now moving into what is known as central bank digital currency. And that central bank digital currency is going to add $2.7 trillion by this year to the US economy. Can China do that? So, in answering your question, I don't see any problem with trade invoices settled by the Eastern Caribbean dollars. You know, we quote in Eastern Caribbean dollars and do that. The question is going to be investment and convertibility. And I don't see where the RMB or the yuan, which is the Chinese money, is going to be able to be easily converted across the different trade blocks and markets that we have. Neither do I see them running the trade deficit that the United States has been able to run for the last 70 years. Not 1 year, 2 years, 70 years. So, in truth and in fact, my friend, let's see, as one attorney says, not attorney, a policeman, he says, the judge would say, let us sit back and see how the evidence unfolds itself. But there's one thing I can tell you, at the end of the day, this is going to get me in trouble now, I'm going to lose some jobs, but hey, you have to say what you have to say. I've been working in Asia for more than 20-something years. I've traveled and worked that area. And since 2001, every year, Asian markets are saying that they will open up their markets to Western products. Right now, the US run a $356, almost $4 billion deficit every year with China. On a monthly basis, they run almost a $44 billion deficit. I don't think Mr. Xi wants to run the risk. Because let me tell you this, and here I go again getting myself in trouble, moving from currency to social construct. One of the hallmarks of the existence of China is something called social harmony. You see, if those 800 million people that they move out of poverty, doing the 9 things that I talk about, between 2001 today, decide that they're going to revert to something less than what they are enjoying now, social harmony is going to go through the door. I don't think Mr. Xi does not understand that. So for me, and I'm old school, I see the move. And here is this. This is not the first time they have talked about this, you know. When the Arab region had that in 74, everybody said, oh, they're going to dethrone the US dollar. Right now, because of technology, that space of coming into a central bank digital currency and the fact of how trade is the construct of trade now, I don't see where it is going to be an easily convertible currency and they can afford us the investment, that climate that we require. As I tell you, I'll prefer to park my money in the Eastern Caribbean than park it elsewhere. Because when you talk about currency control, do you want to see currency control? I lived in some of that earlier on in my life in a country that shall remain nameless. And I tell you, I've seen many of my friends experiencing that kind of stuff. This is why Hong Kong is so important to China. Make no buts about it. If you do business with them, ask where most of the invoicing and the banking used to be done, and look at the address. It was in Hong Kong. You understand what I mean? Because convertibility and investment were two of the main things that Hong Kong afforded the RMB or any other currency. So that is my answer to you, sir. I know I got myself in trouble towards the end there, but hey, truth is truth. You have to do it. So if there are any more questions? Oh, Lord. Yes, go.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes.
I must say, I give your presentation a triple E rating this evening, which is triple E, which is excellent, enlightening, and entertaining. Now it's time for role play. So, if you were the Minister of Economy of the Great Cuban Revolution,
oh, Lord.
yes, we're going there. What would you do to help boost the economy there right now? Thank you.
Oh, boy. Yes, go ahead. The Cuban economy. Cuban economy. Go ahead. There's somebody else. Go down this side. Yes.
Yes,
Charlie.
Scotty.
Yes, yes, man. Go
Yes,
ahead.
Charlie Mills.
Yes.
So you had mentioned that there was a mobster, I forget the name, who says that a country gets the criminal that it deserves. Right?
Lansky.
Yes. And unfortunately, St. Kitts, like many other territories, we have really seen some entrenched criminals right here in our federation, right? It's to the point where we become endemic, right? And there has been some talk of some approaches. In fact, you had mentioned that one of the ways to prevent getting there was to use the broken glass strategy, right? Unfortunately, the current crop has sort of missed that boat. We can certainly look for the next generation and try to get there, but we have some who are there, right? And one of the approaches that has been talked about actively, I know, very controversial approach is to pay for peace, right? I know that you have come from a country, that's nameless.
Yes, sir. Remain nameless.
Remain nameless, that has had many similar issues in the past. So I'm just curious in terms of you as an economist, what are your thoughts on that approach?
All right, wonderful. Cuban economy. Very nice one. Cuban economy. It is so nice when you have prepared for certain questions you have anticipated. All right? Cuban economy, I didn't anticipate that one. You know? But here is this. It is time now for Cuba, as a member of the Western Hemisphere, to become pragmatic and do not rest on their laurels about past grievances or stuff like that. They weren't married to the United States, but any marriage will tell you, you better settle the issue before dinner. I frankly would say to to Cuba, put in the safeguards. You can't drive a car without a steering or a brake, but you want a car. Put in the safeguards, because if Cuba open up right now, they will be overrun by my friends from South Florida, big time. And then it's going to be a situation that you'll see where expats coming in and carving up resources to do that. So I would say they go back and look at what Dal Xiongmen and Lee Kuan Yew did to get a parallel approach, a market economy, and a centrally planned governance. And I don't know why Cuba has not, is it ego or is it fear? But if China can come out and take that road to look at how you transform, as a Cuban driver said to me a couple of years in Miami, he said, Cuba is like this, a fist, so much potential inside of it. But what you can't do with a fist, two fists. We have to be rational to say, look, what are the things we can do 90 miles away from one of the greatest economy? Yes, there were many bad blood, man. Look, let me tell you, in a marriage or relationship, there are going to be issues. But you cannot perpetuate the same kind of policy that gets you into splitting the camp. And that is what is happening to Cuba now. They're splitting, they're perpetuating a policy where in the US you have one side here and one side there, and then you have an aggressive group in South Florida that benefits from that nonsense. Right? Unlike in the case of China, there were dissidents in this country that didn't want the United States to play ball with China at all. Never, never. China decided in the 1500s to burn both because the elites said we're not going out because trade going to expose our people to things we can't manage. Then 1990, before they had the going out strategy, we're going dance now, 1990. 2001, they open up. And if you were to go back to some of the documentation inside of it, it was a struggle to get the leadership to make the adjustment. But they made the adjustment. And now, look what is happening. It's a modern day. Time to move forward. One of the ways Cuba could make money overnight is have a vintage car show and charge $1,000 a ticket just to come and see. Right? But then again, that's just me talking as an entrepreneur. So the Cuban economy, I would look to the model that was used by Deng Xiaoping and Lee Kuan Yew in integrating, in making sure you have a functional market economy, but a centrally planned government. Very left of center, very right of center in terms of their policies. Entrench stuff. Number one, if poverty and the deficit in education are the drivers, then fix it. Looking at the fundamental pillars as to how we're going to alleviate poverty and how we are going to educate and expose the next generation. I cannot support the process of dealing with gangs because Brazil, dealing with, mention it, El Salvador is 60,000. Woo, papa, as they would say in Trinidad. So for me, if it is the super gangs and the options are as a result of ignorance and exposure, because many of the gangs use underage kids as lookouts to settle stuff. They even use young girls to set up. One of the most beautiful young lady in our country that shall remain nameless, she was being executed just a couple weeks ago. And what they said the motive was she was a set-up queen. Beautiful, you know. Lost potential. She could open up a salon and you just go there just to get your nails done or your fingers done. Right? So we now have to look at how we're going into those neighborhoods and pick out those little men to come go with us now So the big men who are really punks and cowards will have to go out and do their own work in looking out and whistle and make noise on behalf of the police when the police is going to come inside there. If access to guns and mental illness are major contributors to the crime of violence, then fix it. Not just looking at suing the gun manufacturers, but I want to tell you something. Many of those little guys you see with the gangs and what have you, they don't have money to buy a Glock or a, what they call it, AR-15. Somebody has to be buying it. And many of those weapons are coming in. So instead of asking the United States to help us, but not telling us how, tell the United States to put screening machines in every NVOCC that ship the barrel and the boxes to the Caribbean, where you can and put on the X-ray machine on every container, where you can do the X-ray, and make sure all of those are connected wireless to 10 or 12 youngsters sitting in a room in St. Kitts. They say, hey, that cargo, they're coming to St. Kitts. What is that looking inside of it? Those are the things you have to encourage to do it, because the technology is there. Yes. So don't tell me about guns passed through, and when it comes to a certain country, you're the whole secretary of a company. Oh man, that's all right. The next thing that can be done to stymie that stuff entering your shore, more or less, we have to recognize the limitations we have on our resources. We have to recognize that sovereignty does play a role, more or less. But every region, every country in the region should have a massive eye in the sky program. And the eye in the sky program, folks, you're going to say that we're giving up our rights and sovereignty or what have you. The eye in the sky in the program will allow us to surveil illegal weaponry that are moving across different borders. And believe me, you have a whole heap of coastline to look at and deal with, more or less. But here is this. There is something called ground penetrating radar. Don't you think they have container ship penetrating radar? And different things give off different signature. What I'm talking about is nothing new. Everybody knows that. The question is whether we want to do it to get peace and quiet there. Number 4, if there's the proclivity to use weapons to commit shootings and murders, then normalize the punishment right across the region, where you do not take anything off the table.
I hear you.
Nothing. If one country says, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, normalize the punishment for using weapons to do it. But it has to be a regional effort, right? Such that the ones in places where we won't say this or say that, more or less, knows that there is no haven if you should do that. Because if you don't do that, you see, a couple nights ago, the vigilantes were out in Haiti, and they took 13 from out of police cars. 17, yeah, well, yeah, 17, because they took them. And you know what happened to the 17? And people are going to say, well, you know, I'm against this penalty and that penalty or what have you. Yeah, you can say that, but I'm telling you this, that if you go down this slippery slope, you're going to have paramilitaries or vigilantes coming in, and none of us want that. None of us want that. And the last thing that I will say, if intelligence gathering curtails your effort in crime interdiction, then temporarily farm it out, but you don't have to farm it outside of the country. You engage your intelligentsia to start build the capacity to do the kinds of network that needs to be done. Do 3 years of those 5 things that I just mentioned. And believe me, you will see a significant change. It's not happening in many of the big, larger countries because there is one thing, access to guns. They're not going to touch that one. But we who are small, open economies, we surely can do that because we don't make it, we don't ship it. A majority of us. Speaking to one specialist from a country that will remain nameless. About 30 years ago, he said to me, he said, Scotty, you know, I don't think we have about 2,000 of violence producers. And I said to him, so what do you mean by that? And he said, well, I think I could manage 2,000. I don't know. But here's this. None of our leaders can tell us that they don't know the places where those things are happening. You and I know that. That's why we don't drive there. When they're having dance and festivals, we don't go there. You understand what I mean? So you have to now decide what are the soft approach you're going to use and what are the constrictive approach you're going to use to get things normalized, because society has to come to the point where you think where you want to live and what needs to go. And in this article that I did on that piece, you don't want to go to 42nd Street in the 80s in New York. But when they decide to clean it up, they cleaned it up. So if you decide to do it, it can happen. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure. I've lost jobs, and I'm at risk to be here.
Well, it has been a long and very engaging evening, and so I just want to say thank all of you for coming, all those who have been involved. We want to thank you graciously, and I want to ask now for our program visionary to give some closing remarks, and we would be on our way very shortly. Thank you graciously. Peter?
Thank you for Archdeacon for your contribution tonight. Thank you, Scotty. I'm sure that the vibes or vibrations will go all over the world with your contribution. And I'm sure that you have given us much food for thought. I want to call on one of the folks who have worked with me, worked with us over the years. In fact, she can't keep out of St. Kitts. I keep telling her to go back. I want to call Charmaine Pemberton, who has been with us for a while, to come forward with a token for Dr. Scott. And the token you will receive are products of folks in the program who have made businesses. And so this is very special for us. So I call Charmaine and Calvin Jenkins to make the contribution. First to Dr. Scott. Who has the camera? Who has the camera? Come this. Who has the camera? Who has the camera? She also a member of the program. She did the course and actually succeeded in completing. Thank you, and I would like to call on Archdeacon to receive a token for navigating us through this program this evening. Archdeacon. So with those few words, I want to thank those of you who are here. Thanks to the CFBC, UWI for facilitating the program. Thank you all for this evening, and I hope it makes a big step forward in terms of our development or contributes towards it. Amani, Philip.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Jenkins, some of you may not know that tomorrow is his birthday.
Not tomorrow. Thank you. So I wanted to thank Kamani Philip, Lady Philip, for the work that they did, Genevieve Mills for the work that they did in putting this program together this evening. Mrs. Philip formed part of the core group that organized the function. I see my brother is here. Thank you very much for coming. And to all others who came to make sure that this is successful and have contributed for the week. We want to start our Alumni Association on Saturday. All who have come through the program. And Dr. Scott is going to help us in terms of putting the economic piece together so that long after we're gone, they have something that they can call their own, an institution that would be homegrown. Thank you very much and good night. There's supposed to be some refreshments, right? Outside.